The woman collapsed beside my fruit stand with one hand pressed against her stomach and the other clutching a small envelope so tightly that the paper was crushed beneath her fingers. 1 second she was standing beneath the bright afternoon sun, staring at the peaches on my table as if she had forgotten why she was there, and the next she was on the pavement, barely conscious. I rushed around the stand and caught her before her head struck the concrete. When she opened her eyes, she didn't ask for an ambulance, water, or even her own name. She looked directly at me with terrified blue eyes and whispered 4 words that made no sense at the time but would eventually expose a secret that had been destroying an entire family for years: don't call his family. If you believe in kindness, forgiveness, hope, and second chances, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share this story with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so our family can continue sharing emotional stories that remind us that one act of kindness can change an entire life. My name is Everett Cole, and at 53 years old, I had learned that people rarely stop at a fruit stand because they are simply hungry. Some came because they needed somewhere quiet to think. Some came because buying 3 apples gave them an excuse to speak to another human being. And some came because life had pushed them to the edge and they didn't know where else to go. I had owned my little roadside fruit stand for 11 years, ever since my wife passed away, and I discovered that working with my hands was easier than sitting alone with my memories. Every morning I arranged baskets of peaches, pears, cherries, strawberries, and oranges beneath the striped awning. By midday, the smell of ripe fruit mixed with warm pavement and the distant sound of traffic. It wasn't a glamorous life, but it was honest, peaceful, and mine. That afternoon, the woman who collapsed was named Maren Whitlock. I didn't know that yet. To me, she was simply a stranger in a pale blue cardigan who looked exhausted before she even reached the stand. She had been walking slowly along the sidewalk, glancing over her shoulder every few seconds. When she collapsed, I immediately called emergency services. But before the call connected, she grabbed my wrist with surprising strength and repeated that I must not call his family. I asked her who she meant, but she closed her eyes again. The paramedics arrived within minutes. They examined her and told me she was severely dehydrated, had dangerously low blood pressure, and appeared to have been under tremendous physical and emotional stress. While they prepared to take her to the hospital, I noticed the envelope lying beside her. I picked it up only because I didn't want it to be lost. Her name was written across the front in shaky handwriting, followed by an address only a few streets from my stand. I handed the envelope to the paramedic, assuming they would give it to her when she was stable. Then Maren opened her eyes. She looked at the envelope, then at me. And she shook her head. The paramedics took her away, leaving me standing beside my fruit stand with a strange feeling I couldn't explain. I thought that was the end of it. It wasn't. The next morning, Maren returned. She looked pale and weak, but she was standing. She told me the doctors had wanted her to stay longer, but she had insisted on leaving. She apologized for frightening me and thanked me for helping her. I asked whether she wanted the envelope back. She stared at it for a long moment. Then she told me that she had spent 3 years trying to decide whether to open it. That sentence made no sense until she explained that the envelope contained a letter written by her late husband, Callum Whitlock. Callum had died 18 months earlier. He had been a successful real estate developer, respected in the community, and the head of a wealthy family. After his death, his relatives had taken control of nearly everything. Maren had been left with the house, a small monthly allowance, and strict instructions from Callum's older brother, Preston, that she should not interfere with the family business. But Callum had apparently left something behind that could change everything. Maren had found the envelope hidden inside an old wooden box in their attic. She hadn't opened it because she was afraid of what it might contain. I asked why she had come to my fruit stand. She said she didn't know. She had simply been walking. Maybe, she admitted, she had needed to see someone who didn't know her husband's family. That was when I realized why she had said not to call them. She wasn't afraid of strangers. She was afraid of the people she had spent her life trusting. I told her she could sit beneath the awning as long as she wanted. I gave her a basket of fruit and refused to take her money. She laughed weakly and said she couldn't remember the last time someone had given her something without expecting something in return. That sentence stayed with me. Over the next several days, Maren began visiting my stand. Sometimes she bought fruit. Sometimes she simply sat in the folding chair beside the cash box. She told me about Callum, and what surprised me was that she didn't describe him as a perfect man. She admitted he had been proud, stubborn, and obsessed with work. But she also remembered how he used to bring home flowers when he knew he had made a mistake. She remembered him sitting beside her when she was sick. She remembered how, after his father's death, he had promised that no matter what happened, she would always be safe. Then she told me about Preston. Preston had always believed the family fortune belonged to him. When Callum became successful, Preston treated him like a rival rather than a brother. Their relationship deteriorated over the years. After Callum's death, Preston became increasingly controlling. He told Maren that grief had made her confused. He told her she didn't understand the family business. He told her that Callum had intended to change his will but never had the chance. And eventually, he convinced her that she had no right to question anything. Maren believed him. Until she found the letter. One afternoon, she finally opened it. I wasn't present when she read it. But when she came to my stand afterward, her hands were shaking. The letter said Callum had discovered that money was being secretly transferred from one of his companies into accounts controlled by Preston. He had gathered evidence and planned to expose it. But there was something else. Callum wrote that if anything happened to him, Maren should not trust Preston. He had also arranged for a portion of his estate to be transferred into a charitable foundation in Maren's name, with enough funds to support her comfortably for the rest of her life. Preston had hidden that information. For 18 months, he had allowed Maren to believe she was financially dependent on him. But Callum's letter contained a final instruction. He had left evidence with someone outside the family. Someone he trusted. That person was me. I thought Maren had misunderstood. I had never met Callum. At least, I didn't think I had. Then she showed me a photograph. It was taken years earlier at a local farmer's market. In the background was my old fruit truck. I remembered that day. A well-dressed man had stopped at my stand and bought 2 baskets of peaches. He had complained that his wife loved them and he had forgotten to buy them on his way home. That man had been Callum. I had spoken to him for perhaps 5 minutes. But apparently, those 5 minutes mattered. Maren told me that Callum had mentioned me in his letter because I had once helped him during a difficult period without asking for anything in return. Years earlier, Callum's business had nearly failed. He had come to the farmer's market with only a few dollars left in his wallet and had admitted that he was embarrassed to return home empty-handed. I had given him the fruit anyway. He had promised to repay me. I had forgotten the entire thing. He hadn't. His letter explained that kindness from strangers had reminded him that not everyone measured life by money. He wanted someone outside the family to know the truth. And somehow, that person was me. The evidence was hidden in a storage locker. Maren had the key. But Preston discovered that she had found something. Within days, a lawyer representing Preston appeared at my stand. He politely suggested that I stop involving myself in family affairs. I told him I had no intention of getting involved in anything. He reminded me that wealthy families had powerful lawyers. I told him that I sold apples and peaches, not secrets. He smiled and left. That was when I understood how serious the situation was. Maren wanted to give up. She told me she didn't want money. She didn't want revenge. She didn't even want justice if justice meant another year of fear. She only wanted peace. I understood that feeling. After losing my wife, I had wanted the world to stop asking me to be strong. But I told Marin something my wife had once taught me. Peace built on surrender is not always peace. Sometimes it is simply silence. Marin decided to open the storage locker. Inside was a box containing bank records, contracts, photographs, and copies of emails showing years of financial transfers. There was also a video recording. Callum had recorded it himself. He looked older and tired. He explained everything. He said he was afraid Preston would hurt him professionally and possibly personally. He said he had made arrangements to protect Marin. Then he apologized. He apologized for leaving her with a burden she had never asked to carry. He told her that she had spent years protecting him from the world, and now it was his turn to protect her from the truth. Marin cried while watching it. I looked away because some grief deserves privacy. When the video ended, she held the screen against her chest. She finally understood that Callum had never abandoned her. He had been trying to protect her even after he was gone. The evidence went to the authorities. The investigation took months. Preston eventually admitted to manipulating financial records and concealing documents from Marin. The family fortune was not destroyed, but the illusion of control was. Marin received what Callum had legally left her. But she didn't keep it all. She established a small foundation for women who had been financially controlled by their families or partners. She called it the Open Door Fund. She told me the name came from something Callum had written. No one should spend their life believing there is only one door. One afternoon, nearly a year after she first collapsed beside my fruit stand, Marin arrived carrying a wooden crate. Inside were peaches. She placed the crate on my counter and told me they were from the first orchard the foundation had helped preserve. I smiled and asked whether she had come to buy fruit. She shook her head. She had come to thank me. I told her she didn't owe me anything. She said she knew. That was why she wanted to. She reminded me that when she collapsed, she had believed she was alone. She had been afraid of her husband's family, afraid of the truth, afraid of losing everything. But a stranger had caught her before she hit the ground. That stranger had become her friend. And that friendship had reminded her that she wasn't helpless. I told her that she had done most of the saving herself. She smiled and said maybe. Then she placed a small envelope on my counter. Inside was a photograph of my wife, whom Marin had somehow found through an old newspaper article about my fruit stand. On the back she had written a simple sentence about how she hoped my wife would be proud of the man I had become. For the first time in years, I cried openly in front of someone. Marin didn't try to stop me. She simply stayed. Sometimes that is the greatest kindness of all. Not fixing someone. Not giving advice. Not pretending their pain isn't real. Just staying. Years later, the fruit stand was still there. But it had changed. The little folding chair beneath the awning had become a place where people sat when life felt too heavy. Marin visited every Saturday afternoon. The Open Door Fund grew. Children from struggling families received school supplies. Women received legal support. Older people received groceries. And every Christmas, Marin brought boxes of fruit to families who couldn't afford them. She never forgot the day she collapsed. Neither did I. One afternoon, she stood beside me watching a young mother receive a basket of peaches without having enough money to pay for it. The woman thanked us repeatedly. Marin looked at me and smiled. I told her that maybe this was what Callum had meant when he wrote that kindness mattered more than money. She nodded. Then she said something that stayed with me. She said that sometimes the people who save us don't even realize they are doing it. I thought about that. The 5 minutes Callum had spent at my fruit stand years earlier had eventually brought his secret to me. The kindness I had shown a stranger had eventually helped save his wife. And the woman who had collapsed beside my fruit stand had eventually helped hundreds of other people stand again. That is how kindness works. It rarely travels in a straight line. It moves from person to person, sometimes across years, sometimes across grief, sometimes through strangers who never expected to matter. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. And before the story ends, leave a meaningful comment telling our community this: what is one small act of kindness someone showed you that you never forgot? Because we never truly know how far one good deed can travel. A basket of fruit can become a friendship. A stranger's kindness can become someone's courage. A hidden letter can become a second chance. And sometimes, when a frightened woman collapses at an ordinary fruit stand and whispers not to call the people she fears, the most important thing you can give her isn't money, answers, or promises. It is simply a safe place to breathe. And sometimes, that is where healing begins.